Like, it starts with the basics of getting your data in order.
Yeah.
So it sounds boring, so let me spice it up. AI has the potential to be a recruiter. It could be an average recruiter, it could be a crappy recruiter. But if you train it properly, it could emulate your best recruiter. So how do you emulate your best recruiter with the bot? You got to feed it.
The trainer.
Yeah. And then you tell it what you want it to do. Answer questions, or do this or that. But
Yeah.
we can get into different like ways that you could build a pipeline for this data. But I think most importantly, step one is to really just to get organized. And I think, most of the texting and phone services, they can record and they can log your message. But
Yeah.
is your data organized enough that you could feed it to the bot? I'm sure everybody in the industry would feel the same, that I don't have 100% control over the final result. And when it comes to sales and recruitment productivity, it comes down to our head count, how many nurses that we have in the field. And so I remember as a recruiter feeling like I can't control whether the manager calls or whether their car is able to make it to this travel assignment. There's so many things that are out of my control that as a recruiter, I learned to have to let that go and to only focus on what I can control, which was my activity, which was my salesmanship and organization and those sorts of things. And so I carried that with me here in this current role. I didn't suddenly change and suddenly believe that it's all about call volume and other metrics that a large corporation would look at.
Welcome to another episode of The Staffing Ring. I'm your host, Jason Lawson, and today I'm joined by Tom Willett, Director of Sales Ops at LeadHealth. Tom, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a deep dive into all things operations around recruitment, staffing agencies, and love to dive deep. So let's get started. Really be great to hear a little bit about your journey. You've held various roles in the industry. So curious about some of your lessons along the way, and how do you end up in sales operations and staffing?
Yeah, Jason, that's a good question. I started recruiting in 2009 during that economic downturn. Was recruiting nurses, but I started recruiting travel nurses in 2011. And I remember the joke at the time was that the previous generation of recruiters were using fax machines. And we were up on the times with Facebook had just come out and, sending texts, and our leadership not appreciating that we weren't getting on the phone like they used to back in the day. I remember early I was using a voice over IP service called Magic Jack. It was just different back then, but
yeah.
Like most recruiters and most people in the industry, as a recruiter for 5+ years, I felt the pain of the process, particularly in travel nurse recruitment, and I wanted to do something about it. I wish we had better systems. I wish we had better processes, and I realized it was a software problem. So back in 2017, I dabbled in some writing code. It was a program called Visual Basic. It's the code behind Microsoft Word and Excel. And I was just trying to build a profile builder and things that would be useful for the team. I didn't really stick to it at the time, and then ended up leading a team, and COVID came around. And then me and my team ended up back in our home office and working day and night. Essentially never really came out of it. And to be honest, I kind of feel bad talking about COVID in a negative way, considering how many people didn't have employment at the time, and I was feeling a little overworked. So it was a little different. But anyway, to get back, in 2021, right at the very beginning of the Great Resignation, I resigned with no plans of what I was going to do next. And of course, about a week later, I get a call from a friend. It's like, I heard a little birdie told me that you might be on the market. You might be a free agent. And so we ended up talking, and it was my good buddy Kyle. And he made the suggestion, what about sales operations? And I instantly thought back to writing code, Visual Basic, and thinking about all the things that I could do for his team, build an automatic like rate calculator and all of these tools that I knew I could build that was better than what they currently had. And that's kind of how I ended up in it. But to be honest, this job here at Lead, this is my first non-sales job in my adult life. And it's been a pretty wild ride. But so grateful the opportunity that Leben, our CEO at Lead, had provided for me, because I've been able to learn so much here, learn to write code and become a programmer and solve all these problems in a more meaningful way. It's been a lot of fun.
Sounds like a journey. And I think one that, at the moment, sales operations in any industry is going to be pivotal to the success and growth of any, company. And, talking about staffing agencies where, whether it be high volume temp or, travel nursing, right through to, permanent retained, finding that right balance of people, process and technology, that's really going to help companies survive and thrive over the next, number of years. So, tell me a bit more, Tom, just in terms of your responsibilities and what's your remit and what are your kind of goals over the next 12 months in your role?
Yeah. Well, it feels like my role is to keep the ship from sinking and try to get it to run faster, dodging icebergs and all that. But in reality, it's all things operations. As I mentioned, I'm a dangerously amateur software developer, programmer, whatever you want to call it. And starting to learn to write code again here at Lead. I started to write JavaScript back in 2022, about 5 months before ChatGPT was released. And then when I learned about ChatGPT about a week after it came out, which was pretty early at the time, like a lot of your previous guests have said, I was just blown away by the technology. By far the best software I'd ever used in my life, best technology I'd ever seen. Point being is that's when my role at Lead really changed. And I ended up becoming the guy who would take every idea as a challenge.
AI and, I think what I see in terms of a lot of agencies is individuals kind of having ChatGPT or Claude or, Google, and really using it just bespoke, ad hoc, and not really having any process or system around it. How are you finding that in terms of giving people some agency to kind of leverage these tools?
Yeah.
But also thinking about the wider. Yeah.
You described it perfectly. With a tool like that, I mean, still to this day, trying to figure out how do we actually utilize it so that we're not, writing a prompt, waiting, copy, paste, take the response, copy, paste, and put it back. Very ad hoc. Like you said, it's very tricky. But early on, we offered the team access to ChatGPT. Like obviously, there's a free one, but we'll pay for it if you use it.
Yeah.
Had a couple people, take advantage of that. And then when Google Gemini came out, which was integrated with Gmail and all of our other tools, asked again for volunteers. Surprisingly, it wasn't 100% of people volunteering, but to your point, not a lot of structure, because at least there wasn't at the time a playbook for how to do these things.
Right.
And even if there is a playbook today, I don't know if I would trust it because it probably hasn't been tested. So yeah, it's really tricky.
And still, I think a lot of them are very generic, right? These playbooks are not built for staffing agencies and travel nursing staffing agencies. So to think about your existing process, the way you do business, you need your own bespoke playbook. And what challenges are you seeing at the moment? Because I think it is something that a lot of agencies and even software companies are really grappling with, that speed of innovation versus some control and some process around it. How are you thinking about that for the year ahead?
I've been feeling like I'm behind. I've been told by a lot of people that our company and our team is way ahead of technology. I feel like we're 2 years behind. And so I guess if others are feeling the same, like, you're not alone. Because I've been trying my best to, to bring this technology to the team, and not that they're resisting it, but to your point, it's not easy and it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I forgot the rest of my point. What was your question again?
Well, I think it lends itself to a good point in terms of technology is always a year or 2 or 3 or 5. If I think about VoIP, VoIP was, late 90s, early 2000s. It wasn't really until 2010s it started to get mass adoption, and even in the last 5 years now, a lot more value add services around that, like, Ringover provides, for example. So I think the same thing, like, you see the headlines, you see, the leaders of these companies talking about what great AI can do, but adoption, it will take time because you've got people involved in the process, right? And so I think that's where, and I think, it is a great insight that most people will feel like they're behind, but in fact, even the way you've described it, where you've got the team on the paid version, I would say you're above the top quartile already in just doing that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such a good concept and a good product, ChatGPT, that it's hard not to use it. I certainly use it every day, and I think if I was recruiting, I would lean on it in the tougher situations, not to write the email for me, but to help clarify my thoughts before we send the email out, full of emotion. Like, why would you do this to me? Kind of thing. And, give it a refresh. I remember seeing an example early on of somebody writing to a client in all curse words, their explanation, feed it to ChatGPT and say, please rewrite this for me.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding, just to make sure that our emotions don't get the better of us. To kind of have a friend there to help out has been super helpful. And I imagine recruiters use it a lot more than they admit. And, but I'm not too worried about it. I feel like our recruiters are very focused on trying to stay human, and they know that they don't want to deal with robots, and that nurses don't want to deal with robots, at least not to the quality that they are now.
Yes. And thinking about LeadHealth and many other agencies who are either hybrid or, like yourselves, fully remote, how do you think about not just AI but operations from a kind of remote hands, deployment and engagement and adoption of new technologies?
Yeah. Experimentation is still ongoing. It always will be.
Yeah.
I'll give you a hot take. I hate meetings. Sure, some are necessary. People need to talk and certainly express themselves. But from my experience, long meetings lead to long meeting hangover and less output and less production overall. And so I think for virtual organizations like ours, we're 100% remote. We need to find agreement about our goals at a really high level, try to hire the best talent we can, and then let the talent do the work. Virtual employees are never going to know everything that they want to know, and they're going to blame being virtual, even though I feel it would be the exact same in an office. But if we're going to have a meeting and I want them to know something, I want them to know the most important thing. And that's really been my biggest focus. And that was my motto for last year. If we're going to do one thing, we're going to do the most important thing. If we're going to do 2 things, we're going to do the top 2 most important things and the most important one first. And if we keep it that way, it really makes the virtual world a lot easier to deal with, because it makes some of the smaller stuff either seem too petty to deal with, or at least it isolates it as its own thing. Not like, you're not emailing me enough, so I feel like the company doesn't care about me and that we don't know what we're doing. It's really easy to lose clarity on goals in the virtual world. I'm sure you've seen it where, like, I was working in an office and had virtual recruiters even 5 years ago, and they were talking bad about some of the compliance people on our team. Like, what do they even do? And every day I'm walking out at 6 7 p.m. saying bye to those compliance people who are
Right.
still in the office, and people are talking bad about them like they're not working
Mm.
hard because they didn't like actually see them.
Yeah.
There's always going to be that with virtual. So I'm really trying to make sure that we talk about things at a high level of what the organization's goals are. And then as a leader talking to whether it's your recruiter or your team member, talking about the things that really matter to them, and what their personal goals are, and what we can do in this role to help them achieve those goals in their life. Stick to what matters and things will work out.
I think, yeah, it does drive a certain behavior, doesn't it, in terms of what's important, what needs a meeting, what can be done, on communication tools, whether it's Slack or Google Suite. And I think it also kind of democratizes the extroverts and the introverts, kind of more of a level playing field. Whereas in the office, you get these boisterous individuals who kind of, do take over a lot of the oxygen in the room. So I think it's, certainly from an operational point of view, I'm sure there's kind of ways that you help manage communication, collaboration, but I think, there is a lot of benefit for sure.
Yeah. And I've also found, I think people are smarter than we give them credit for, in some ways. So I like to keep trainings really short. Like if we're rolling out something new to the recruitment team, I want to get the product or get it into their hands as quickly as possible. Inevitably, if I explain how something works for 30 minutes and then I give them the tool, I feel like every time they ask me a question from minute one, and I realize, like, were they just not paying attention this whole time? Maybe I'm a bad trainer. Maybe
Right.
this doesn't work. So I've changed my strategy to a lot of times I'm giving them the tool before we even talk about it. And I find they're coming to the meetings with a lot better questions. Like, hey, Tom, when I click this, I expected this, and this is what's happening instead. Instead of, what's the point of this? How does this work? I've been very trusting with the recruiters. Just try it out, click the buttons, and give me feedback. And it's been working a lot better than trying to design this perfect thing, explain it to them, and have this expectation that they're going to follow my perfect process that I built. They tend to come up with their own process anyway, so just be open to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's an amazing kind of insight in terms of, training traditionally has been, right, we're not going to show you anything. We're going to talk to you about it for 2 hours. We might do some screen share. But actually, if you flip that script and say, all right, here it is, go play with it. It's like, it's like your kids with toys, right? If they can get their hands on it, they can quickly understand what it means for them, what buttons they like to push, and if they can possibly break it as well. And then come with the questions and say, hey, this isn't working for me. Is there a way we can integrate with, this other tool, because that would really help my process?
Exactly. And not to get too far into the software design, but I have made the comment a lot that good software doesn't need training. How many people took the training on how to use Uber? Like, none.
0.
I don't know if it even exists because it's pretty self-explanatory. And if the software is designed well and you put it in the hands of even average users, like they'll probably figure it out.
Yeah.
Or at least show you something you didn't know before.
100%. So let's talk a bit more about kind of new deployments of technology, that that adoption, and some of that training development we've spoken about. So let's say it's 3 months into a new tool being deployed. How are you sort of thinking about, is this being effective? Are you getting the benefit, the ROI that the salesperson 6 months ago was promising? And how do you kind of measure?
Great question.
Like which recruiters are perhaps using it or not using it? Do you, how are you thinking about? You can take any software as an example, or just more of a general approach.
Yeah, I love feedback. I just find it's really hard to get it, especially
Right.
from busy salespeople.
Yeah.
So the untrained old way that I used to do it would, be like, here's the new tool, here's the training, let me know how it goes, and then follow up a few days later, make sure it's working. And and make sure that that they're using it and asking for feedback. Yeah, we created a document for you to give feedback, and here's an Excel spreadsheet of all the bugs and feedback. And it would be like maybe 1 or 2 entries early on, and that was it.
Yeah.
We never really, really got the feedback that we needed. And so I think I learned pretty quickly that we need to put the observation tools in early on.
Right. Yeah.
So that we would just know. If assuming the tool's working, you see like they've logged in once in the last 2 weeks, like you've learned all you need to learn.
Sure.
So instead of asking for feedback, we're just asking better questions.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, some people are using this tool and having success. Notice that you haven't used it, or is it not working for you? And just being able to follow up to make sure that that they still have access and the ability to do it, and then reinforcing that behavior. But before we had observation and be able to monitor just that it's actually happening,
Yes.
we just were not getting very good feedback. And the tools now are just really good. If you look at a tool like called Hotjar, and there's many like it, essentially records like a video of the users using the tool.
Right.
I haven't used it on recruiters per se, but that's something we could if it really mattered. But just to even just get metrics of like how many times they logged in,
Right.
to see if they used the tool has been big. Because when you design a tool that works really well, I find that they either use it all the time or not at all.
Yeah.
And
And
so you learn
with
really
tools like Hotjar, you can sort of see heat maps of where they're kind of spending most of their time on the page, and start to see the behavior, not just the logins.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another company that does something similar, but they had a feature called a rage click, or maybe it's Hotjar, but clicking the same area like more than 5 times in 1 or 2 seconds
Right.
would send an alarm, like a rage,
Right.
like mad.
Yeah.
That's a very useful tool.
I've not heard that.
Yeah. Well, especially working virtual, I remember feeling this, 2010, 2015, like in that era of the software was so bad and so slow that even if I leave a note in my system and hit save, if I have to wait 10 or 15 seconds for it to load to the next page, like I used to get mad and like yell at the sky, like working from home. Why can't it be faster? I could get so much more done if this would just work. And if my bosses at the time were looking for rage clicks, they would have found it.
There you go. And how do you think about productivity as it's a hot topic, obviously, certainly in the last 12, 18 months with a lot of agencies having pretty tough times in the market, and so getting more efficient, more productive, and certainly in my view, a collection of tools, it's hard to often pinpoint one tool driving X productivity gains. But how do you think about either as a collective, as a system, where you are today productivity wise versus where you want to be in July, for example?
Yeah. Well, it's really tricky, obviously, in recruitment. I'm sure everybody in the industry would feel the same, that I don't have 100% control over the final result. And when it comes to sales and recruitment productivity, it comes down to our head count, how many nurses that we have in the field. And so I remember as a recruiter feeling like I can't control whether the manager calls or whether their car is able to make it to this travel assignment. There's so many things that are out of my control that as a recruiter, I learned to have to let that go and to only focus on what I can control, which was my activity, which was my salesmanship, and organization and those sorts of things. And so I carried that with me here in this current role, that I didn't suddenly change and suddenly believe that it's all about call volume and other metrics that a typical large corporation would look at. So when it comes to productivity, we like to measure the activity that leads to the placement as opposed to just the placement and the revenue that comes from it. And so a lot of that activity starts with the phone call, having a good phone system that actually tracks calls and can monitor them, and then to be able to listen in and see, like, kind of inspect what you expect it feels like silent micromanaging, because I like to listen to calls and see what's happening, and I don't usually reach out and criticize or give them a hard time about what's happening, unless they ask me to. But really just checking to make sure they're actually working, which I don't do that often because I never caught them not working. It hasn't really been a problem. But
again, more of an observational kind of approach. And I think, the operational sort of KPIs, as I would describe them, as opposed to the kind of output or revenue generating kind of metrics, there's, in my view, most agencies have room to improve in terms of that almost continuous improvement of, all right, calls being made, follow-ups, just good data hygiene in the CRM and ATS. And I think certainly, the team at Ringover spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what dashboards or reporting is going to help just inform sales ops or leadership about, okay, what is that level of activity? Because, if you can double activity across the team, you're naturally going to have, better outputs and better gains.
yeah, you would think so. But I remember having this problem that some of the most successful recruiters didn't have the highest activity. And if you were to say, find a successful person and do what they do, suddenly a brand new recruiter would say, like, why should I make 100 calls today when the top performer made 25? Like, well, it's different. It takes some time to get to that point where your 25 calls have more meaning than the 100 calls previously. So it is not just about activity. I think trust plays a huge part in it. And that's something that I feel, that I felt why I came to Lead is something they talked about. And 3 years later, we still are acting as if the human touch matters more than anything. And I've worked with people before that just have this, like, maybe it's a killer instinct, but even when bad things would happen, they just couldn't help themselves. But like, I don't know what else to do. Let's make cold calls.
Right.
Like, oh, someone just died. Can we mourn them for a second? I'm not like we're so focused on our activity that we just like lose our humanity. And I think if you hire good people and then actually trust them, good things tend to happen.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've seen, as you say, that high performer, which if you could bottle it, it'd be amazing. But often they are almost like an outlier in terms of their activity versus performance. So yeah, interesting that's alive and well in the staffing sector as well.
Yeah. I mean, I wish the top performer made 200 calls a day and everybody would feel that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
But
yes.
It's not really about that. One awesome call is better than 200 worthless calls.
And again, thinking about how Ringover really leaning into that in terms of getting the AI to think about the sentiment analysis and the mood, can you really extract some of that unstructured data? It's not just the phone call being made. It's not just the duration of the call. It's actually how positive was the call, and then working with ATS and CRMs, how do we then inject some of that qualitative data into fields that can then say, right, this is a more likely outcome from this type of call. It's not just the quantity of calls, but actually the quality of the call as well. So
I'm so glad you said that, because I wish I had this tool when I was recruiting. Like most early recruiters, when I first started, I had a script or list of questions, a candidate intake form, whatever you want to call it. And I would try to ask them all. And as I got better at it, I would skip around and try to be more natural. But inevitably, I'm sure it didn't sound as good because I hear it in other recruiters.
Right.
When they're actually asking the exact question that's written, I can tell. I could just hear it in the voice that they're not being casual. And I noticed that when I let go of the script and got a wireless headset and just started pacing around my office while I talked, my conversation just got so much better. And people were able, I got them to open up to me and tell me like what they were really thinking and what their goals were and what other offers they had, what other agencies they're working with, all the secrets that you want to get
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of success training recruiters and like having them read the script several times and then let it go and just be a person. Well, 2015, I didn't have the ability to take notes very well as you're pacing around the room. So
Right.
I would have all these
Yeah.
awesome conversations, and then I'd have a 10 or 15-minute download of everything I could
Yeah.
possibly remember to put it into the ATS. And the quality of the data that would go into the ATS would just be, I don't know, 5% as good as what it would be with AI. Because there are important like human elements, like, oh, this person was talking about their relationship or about their kid. And then there's really important detailed elements, talking to a clinician about a specific skill they have, or what type of procedures they did, or what type of equipment they used on that unit. It can get very, very detailed. And I hated the idea of going from having a conversation to like, okay, hold on, let's write that down, say that again.
Right. Yeah.
To have somebody listening to me and transcribing everything that's being said would have just been a dream and would have cost, 15, $20 an hour, back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm
So
very
let's
jealous of the recruiters today to be able to walk around the
indeed,
room,
indeed.
do whatever
Yeah.
they want, and not have to take
The
notes.
summary of the call is just pumped straight back into the ATS. Notes are there automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take a look forward. I think certainly your experience, which I love in terms of that balance of having been a recruiter and now you're fully in the ops world. What are you seeing? What's exciting you about the future of staffing, technology, or the industry as a whole? Like, where do you think things going?
It's God, there's a lot of things to potentially be excited about, but I'll be honest with you. The thing at the forefront of our mind is that it feels like recruiting has gotten a lot harder recently. Not just because business is down, but candidates and nurses in particular aren't as trusting of recruiters as one would think. They have access to more information than ever before.
Yeah.
Facebook groups are a great resource for nurses to kind of get together and talk about their experience and kind of band together. It's almost like Facebook groups are turning into unions, without the union bosses.
Yeah.
I'm finding nurses creating their own tools. I just saw a website this week that a nurse was created like a survey. Like, put down your hospital, what unit you worked at, and was it understaffed, overstaffed? How did they treat you? I'm getting very granular. It reminds me a lot of like what's the website where you rate your professor?
Okay. Yeah.
There's just a lot of transparency, and in the end, it's just, I guess it's making it harder for agencies to sell BS.
Right.
Not that we sell BS, but it is. Shoppers know what they're looking for now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so they're finding information, whether it's true or not, or whether it's opinionated or not. They're finding information and coming to the interviews a lot more prepared than before and a lot more knowledgeable than before. And so I guess I could say that I'm excited about like the technology that's going to solve this. Speed to market being kind of one of these phrases that people talk about of where technology can solve this problem. That, in the old days, you post a job, might not know about it for a day or two. You got to call somebody, you got to talk about it, and it could take several days or at least several hours to get them submitted to a job. And with automation and technology, this idea that, well, we can get you submitted faster, which in travel nursing matters a lot.
Right.
For a lot, it's like the first submitted sometimes gets the job, or you have to be one of the first 3 to get submitted. Otherwise, you just don't even get considered. Just very high velocity kind of industry. And so this idea that automation would give you an edge, if we can get the candidate submitted in 1 minute, like we'll beat everybody.
Right.
That seems really exciting. Because, we could go down to 1 minute, 1 second. Could we submit somebody in 1 second? Sure, you'll have an edge until the next agency gets the same technology. And then you have 2 agencies submitting after 1 millisecond of the job being open. And then you have 10 agencies. And then next thing you know, the entire world, every candidate
Yeah.
can submit to every job within 1 millisecond of it opening. And suddenly speed to market is not a competitive advantage anymore. So what I'm kind of excited about is for everybody to try to use this technology, max it out, and then we're going to go right back to where we were before. Because if 1,000 candidates are submitted to a job within 1 millisecond, suddenly something else matters, like the qualifications of the candidate,
Right.
How they would fit on this, this unit. Is it a culture fit? Is it a clinical fit? Which I think is what recruiting was supposed to always be about and what we're supposed to deliver. I'm excited for the technology, but I'm also excited for us to realize it's not going to save everything in the end.
I love that take. I think, it's almost like give it enough time. It's a level playing field of technology deployment and execution. And then it almost flips the script in terms of, as you say, it becomes about the brand of the agency or the people, or relationships,
Reputation.
or as you say, the community. If you're an agency that's invested into that Facebook community, and really find the best talent, because the 1,000, applications in a millisecond is not going to give the hiring, team any clue of signal of who is best. I think it's a fascinating take.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I took an Uber from the airport a couple months ago, and I was talking to the Uber driver. He was in operations. I was having a good chat, and he tells me about this website that he signed up for. And he's like, for $100 a month, they submit me to like 100 jobs a week or something ridiculous. It's all AI based. I was like, excuse me, say that again? And he had essentially admitted that he had submitted his resume to hundreds of jobs with little to no effort. Just give him $100.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. If it's him, then it's going to start to happen more. And I think the larger organizations are feeling that now of, what do you do with 900 candidates for one opening? Like, where do you even begin? And how do you do this in a useful way that's also compassionate to the humans that are putting themselves out there, who have a family and a history and a career that, like, this might have meaning to them, but to suddenly where's the filter for what college they went to? Let's just look at the Harvard grads only. Like, just dismissive of the human.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could humanize 900 candidates for one opening, but it's an interesting problem that we're going to have here.
I guess one question I had was, given your experience in the sector from, recruiting and operations, is there a piece of advice or sort of a mantra that you've kind of carried through with you about how to kind of think about the industry, thinking about, the way the agency runs?
Well, things haven't really changed too much. It's still a people business. It's still presenting the right opportunity at the right time. But I think from the operational technology perspective, certainly don't want to miss the boat on AI. I think everybody's heard that phrase that AI won't take your job. Somebody who learns AI might take your job. So I think it really starts with the mindset that AI is a huge opportunity. And if you don't currently see the opportunity in AI, that's not AI's fault. That's your fault.
Right.
I have found this AI technology, it's not very creative on its own, but it's better than the average person on an average day. It's better than me on a bad day for sure.
Yeah.
It's given me some good ideas. It's given me some bad ideas. And it's certainly inspired a lot of ideas. And sometimes it can take a good idea and make it really, really good with just the tiniest little icing. But from a business perspective, really nothing changes. In the end, the best executed ideas that are going to win. So you need a great idea and you still need great execution. But one mistake that I think people make with AI, at least people that talk bad about it, is that they're comparing AI to their personal strengths. So an accountant trying to out accountant AI, it's going to win every time. The person is. I don't think AI is that good to beat a talented person, and so I don't look at it that way. I like to delegate my weaknesses to AI.
Yeah.
So
I think that's
you
where
don't
that sort of
have to
co-pilot analogy, I think, works really well in terms of it's
yeah,
there to help and support and as I say, come in and help with, weaknesses or gaps or just time efficiency.
yeah, and it can compound really quickly. You start to take an idea like a transcription of a phone call or a video that you could say after your second phone call, feed both of them to the AI and start to look for comparisons and start to build maybe a personality for this character that you're talking to. But you could also do it with meetings. So we'll have like our meetings recorded, and then I'll feed it to the bot. Here's our master plan. Here
Yeah.
was yesterday's meeting. What do I need to do today?
Yeah.
The types of things that we would have paid an assistant for, back in the day, using AI for that sort of thing to do the things that I don't really want to do. But it really starts with mindset because it's surprising to me that probably 9 out of 10 people I personally know have not used ChatGPT more than 10 times in their life. And that blows my mind.
I share the same experience and just talking with, just colleagues and just general people out in the business world and personal world as well. Yeah, there's a lot of people who are, just not even just learning just by doing and being curious about it. So, I think mindset, I think that's a big takeaway in terms of all the tools and operations and strategies, but you've got the right mindset, you lean into it, you'll learn and you'll discover through that journey.
Yeah. And
Are there
I'm
any?
not suggesting that you fire your lawyer and use AI instead, but if you can't
Yeah,
afford a lawyer and you weren't going to get one anyway, it certainly isn't going to hurt. But I think to wrap it up, like practically, my advice would be the same as everyone else's. Like it starts with the basics of getting your data in order.
yeah,
So it sounds boring, so let me spice it up. Like AI has the potential to be a recruiter. It could be an average recruiter. It could be a crappy recruiter. But if you train it properly, it could emulate your best recruiter. So how do you emulate your best recruiter with a bot? You got to feed it
the
the data.
training.
Yeah. And then you tell it what you want it to do, like to answer questions or do this or that. But
Yeah,
we can get into different like ways that you could build a pipeline for this data. But I think most importantly, step one is to really just to get organized. And I think most of the texting and phone services, they can record and they can log your message. But
yeah,
is your data organized enough that you could feed it to the bot? And I think there's a test that you could do right now. It's not even that technical. Can you locate your best recruiter's best conversation in less than 5 minutes?
wow.
Can you find the recording, the transcription, like something in less than 5 minutes? Because if you can't, then your data is not ready for a bot.
Fantastic question. I love that. I'm going to take note of that. I'll even drop it in the show notes because I think that's a really hot take in terms of perspective. And I think it also points to that mindset, being curious, asking questions. That's a brilliant one. I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really the way that I approach AI. I am evangelical about the acceleration, the EACC concept. So I don't have anything bad to say about it, but I am scared to let it go out in the world with my customers.
Right.
And I'm scared because I've watched it. I'll do one at a time. We're building a chatbot, and we've built a chatbot, we're working with one, but if you just follow one conversation, you'll find so many things like, oh, I would have done that differently, or I don't want it to say that. How do we solve this problem? Now, if you send 1 million messages and never look at them, you're never going to see that. But I'm into the details. I feel like I was an artist as a recruiter. It was about my personality and my charisma, and why would I delegate this to a boring bot? I want it to be really good like me. And if you want to get that granular with the bot, it takes a lot of work. And you have to really go through the process. And this is where a lot of recruiter requests turn into kind of fantasy. Like, hey, Tom, could we just get a bot and magic happen? Like if you were to give a bot, here's a huge spreadsheet of all my sales. How do I increase my sales? The answer might be like, well, go to the total sales column and change the number.
Right.
It's not going to have enough context as to like how it can actually like help me.
Yeah.
And so it's not magic. You really have to simplify what you're looking for. Really break it down as if you're talking to a child. Otherwise, you're probably going to miss the boat.
Sure. Love it. Tom, this has been amazing. You're starting from your experience through being a recruiter, and I think just your approach of operations to me it's a real standout in terms of, you understand all the moving parts of what makes a good and a great agency and tool set for recruiters. But also, I love your approach to observations on productivity, and it's not that micromanaged, driven by KPIs. It's, and as LeadHealth, espouses in terms of the trusting, the team, the adults, and giving them that latitude and the agency to perform, I think, really speaks volumes in terms of, the right approach, and being fully remote, where you're sort of leveraging the best of what that, gives you as a business as well. So, thank you for sharing. Love the chat. And any closing remarks you want to leave for the audience?
Well, I don't think so. Just have fun with it. Try to have as much fun as you can. Otherwise, it's just not worthwhile. That's all I got for you. What else you got?
That's a wrap. Right. Thanks, Tom. And thanks everybody for listening, and see you on the next episode of The Staffing Ring.